We gather today on the unceded territory of Awaswas and Mutsun-speaking tribes of the Central Coast. At this location, Mutsun speakers lived to the east and south, with the Awaswas speakers of the Yupi tribe living to the west and to the north. The Amamutsun tribal band are descendants of indigenous people taken to missions Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization. The Amamutsun are working to keep their traditions alive and heal from historical trauma. We seek to learn from and support them with some special information about that coming up in a little bit. I'm following up on our land acknowledgement with some choice words, but first, some background about the person who wrote them. John Trudell was a Santee Dakota activist, author, actor, musician, and poet. He performed music as a background to his words as he spoke them. John Trudell's activism began when he participated with a group of people who occupied Alcatraz Island for 19 months, November 1969 to June 1971. 5 years before the protest, Alcatraz Island and its newly vacant prison were classified as surplus federal territory, or property. The occupiers claimed that the island should be returned to indigenous people rather than given to the city of San Francisco. Their claim was in line with the terms contained in the Treaty of Fort Laramie, a legal agreement that the U.S. government had broken countless times in the document's 100-year history. In the years after the Alcatraz occupation, the government did show interest in John Trudell's activities. His FBI file ballooned to 17,000 pages. A decade into his activism, John Trudell burned an American flag on the steps of the FBI building in Washington, D.C. The very next day, John Trudell's pregnant wife, their 3 children, and his mother-in-law perished in a fire at the home of his in-laws. An investigation concluded that the fire was accidental. John Trudell passed away 10 years ago, late in 2015. Here's a sample of what he wrote and spoke. Protect your spirit, because you are in the place where spirits get eaten. No matter what they ever do to us, we must always act for the love of our people and the earth. We must not react out of hatred against those who have no sense.
I know I don't have to tell you about the bleeding wound that is our border, about the trauma and the fear and the panic that surrounds us now, immigrant communities, here, across the country. I know each one of us feels inside themselves the same thing that I feel of a spark, a flame, of compassion and care. And I found, because I've spent some time in some faith communities along the border in Mexico and elsewhere here in this region, Southern California, that are responding to this, I've come to see that spark, that feeling, as what the Christians call the Holy Spirit, or the Blessed Spirit, the compassionate Spirit, the welcoming Spirit. And I think the reality is that it's mostly, for me anyway, just a spark most of the time. I think for most of us in our community, that's the case. And our challenge is to bring it to life, is to ignite that into a flame, right? So That's what the Fourth Amendment sanctuary policy and sign is about. And I think we have some things to show up here. Maybe I can magically bring them up on the screen. Yeah. Okay. I think we've talked about it a bit, so you know that this is the notion is a sign that says our space, our house, our workplace. There's a state law that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that now says our schools and our health facilities are off limits to immigration enforcement agents in the absence of judicial warrant. And maybe even then, but we have a constitutional right not to open our door if there's not a judicial warrant presented. And our board decided to do that here with the approval of our tenants at the last meeting. We still have to develop the sign, and we're working on that now, and there'll be a workshop after the service next week to try to come, and I want to share a little bit about that with you now. Didn't work. All right. Yeah, okay. I'll just flash through these really quickly. These are examples of signs that are already up and around in our community. This particular one was prepared, I believe, by the United Farm Workers Union, distributed across rural California. This next one is Community Bridges has got it posted. You can see they vary a lot. They say much the same thing. Community Bridges is kind of hard to read, a lot of detail. Some of it's not necessary. Okay, all right. This is put up by the same folks who do the red card. You can see the basic things here is that we're exercising our rights to say ICE can't come in without judicial warrant. Okay, next. All right, this is a beautiful one. Pardon me? I'm working on it. You've inspired me. Okay, this is really popular in the Catholic churches. Although that image could be changed easily, just for whatever works for you or us. An important thing about that one was that it was Spanish and English, right? Okay, go ahead, next. This is one that, in starting to think about this, my son and I came up with, which was making Lady Liberty sort of a little more like that, and announcing immigrants are welcome here. And the language down there is the sort of essential language that these signs have to have. And move on. Okay, coming out of our congregation, Mary, when we first started talking about this a couple of months ago, came up with this beautiful notion of sheltering hands. You can see that's her watercolor there on the left. And also mentioned is the concept of a house, a sheltering house, a place that's a safe place. And my son, back up. I didn't want to show that yet. Okay. And my son and I were inspired by those sheltering hands. And then Tara mentioned at an interfaith gathering last week that our chalice is actually used during another period of fascist threat as a symbol of safety. And so it occurred to Jemiah and myself, Jemiah's the graphic artist, that these hands look almost like flames coming up. So you can move on now. Yeah. So that's another concept. All this has not been decided. None of this has been decided. Let's move on. Okay. So what we need to nail down is, these elements on our sign. And we'll have a chance to talk about it and see if there's some consensus and hopefully not too many arguments about it after the service next week. One thought is that the sign can express our values, not just with the graphic, maybe with. Next. All right. Maybe with some kind of language that people love. We've been here. The word is out that we're doing this, and I've heard from a dozen churches around the Bay Area, pastors, rabbis. The chair of Indivisible reached out to me last week asking for copies of our sign that they could distribute at No King's Day. Of course, it's not ready yet. But if our sign is identified with our fellowship, and the concept is not just to have it here, but for us to all to have a copy to take home and put on our doors and a yard sign size possibility that, we can use. If it comes out and around in the community, I predict it may actually inspire some interest in this here fellowship in the community. So, I just want to say, am I past my 5 minutes? Yeah. Okay. Well, I just want to say, let's ignite the welcoming spirit. Let's use this as one way to do this and to take it out to our community.
Well, I'm going to give a little talk on what is compassion. And I chose an excerpt from a book by the Dalai Lama. And I think he's probably an expert on compassion. I think you might agree. In fact, the Tibetans consider him an incarnation of compassion. So my talk today will be direct quotes and then sort of commentary on what he said, but it's all his words, either directly or indirectly. Okay, what is compassion? The Dalai Lama says, compassion is the wish that all beings be free of suffering. Compassion is the root of all altruistic activity. We need to cultivate a compassion that is powerful enough to make us feel committed to bringing about the well-being of others, so that we are actually willing to shoulder the responsibility for making this happen. So, compassion is a response to suffering. Suffering comes up a lot in Buddhism, and to many it seems like a broken record. Well, okay, why? Some say, mostly I'm pretty happy, but I have my ups and downs like everyone. Life isn't all about suffering. I've heard people say that, and that's true. But in fact, suffering is around us all the time. We hear it every week during joys and sorrows. We hear it in the banging of the fly against the window, trying to return to the sky. We know it overwhelmingly and unimaginably in our country and in the world right now. So where does compassion arise? Doesn't the wish to help arise because we are aware of the suffering? But let's not leave it there. The Dalai Lama says, on the mental level, we find that the more compassionate we are, the more we have peace. The moment we think about others, the more our mind becomes broader and more open. At that moment, when you think about others' suffering, at that moment you may feel unhappy or disturbed. More than one moment, I would imagine. But you take that on voluntarily. Deep inside, you have courage, self-confidence, and inner strength when you care for others. Okay, I'm certain that everyone in the congregation has done compassionate actions in many different ways. There are so many possible actions, whether in response to political issues, like yesterday, or in your personal life, or in the community, or in consideration of the suffering going on in the wider world. Near and far, people are going through so much, and so much suffering is going on. The opportunities, therefore, for action seem limitless. I think, too, there is joy in helping others. Selfless acts relieve us, at least momentarily, from our own problems. The Dalai Lama himself says, the problems I have here and there don't matter so much. Isn't it true? When we think about others, we automatically are focusing outside of ourselves. And haven't we all felt a kind of joy and connection when we help someone? Compassion is a source of happiness for those we help and for ourselves as well. So, we can take joy in what we do. It is driven by compassion for suffering, large and small, and all that we see and feel. We sustain ourselves and each other with joy, open-heartedness, and inner strength that come with compassionate action. Notice it when you feel it. Rest in it for a moment and come back to it again and again. Take a moment right now to remember a specific time when you took compassionate action that brought you a lot of happiness and perhaps open-heartedness towards another, and an inner strength that comes with taking action that is in line with your deeper values.
I'm going to conclude by reading words written by the poet Miller Williams. You may have heard them sung by his daughter Lucinda Williams. Have compassion for everyone you meet, even if they don't want it. What seems like conceit, bad manners, or cynicism is always a sign of things no ears have heard, no eyes have seen. You do not know what wars are going on down there where the spirit meets the bone.